Hello and welcome to Wine Australia's 15 Minutes on Riesling. Today we're going to explore the history of Riesling in Australia, where it grows best, the regional styles, and we have guest Paul Grieco beaming in from New York to discuss his love and his take on Riesling in general and Australian Riesling specifically. Okay, quick snapshot of the history. Actually, there's a wonderful storied history of Riesling in Australia. Actually dates back to 1837 when the first Riesling was brought in. That variety was then embraced by the subsequent settlers in the various settlements as they made their way around various parts of Australia. By the mid-1800s, this was the highly regarded white variety, and that didn't really change for quite some time. This went on for the next several decades. 1930s, more improvements in terms of winemaking technology, and that also improved a little bit later in the piece as well. From the 50s, Australian Riesling is revolutionized with cold pressure, some of the sort of techniques that allowed us to be able to capture some of the really interesting, vibrant flavors of Riesling. And this is our leading variety from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This was the variety that kind of defined white wine in Australia. 1990s, Chardonnay became really popular. And so there's been a bit of a decline. However, Riesling still today, if you're traveling around various parts of Australia, restaurants, cafes, no matter what, you will see Riesling either on by the glass or on by the bottle. It's definitely still a significant variety in Australia specifically. Globally, different story, but we'll discuss that. Common styles. For the vast majority of styles you're going to see, one of the things you can hang your hat on with top Riesling from Australia, generally speaking, they are along the lines of a dry style, very citrusy, low residual sugar and very high acid and lively and juicy. Off-dry styles are starting to make a real impression, sort of along the lines of some of the German Rieslings. Just a little bit of residual sugar to sort of balance out that beautiful, vibrant, lip-smacking juiciness of the natural acidity. Dessert wines also exist in Australia, the Riesling styles. We do not really get botrytis in many areas in Australia. Therefore, botrytis-affected Riesling not common, but there are some delicious dessert styles as well. But the vast majority of the styles are either off-dry or, quite frankly, dry. Grown in a lot of regions, there's actually all sorts of pockets of delicious Riesling in Australia, but to keep it sort of tight and tidy, we'll look at Clare Valley, Eden Valley, the two absolute benchmark regions. Very cool stuff happening in Tasmania and some really delicious wines in Great Southern. First and foremost, we have to look at the Clare Valley. This has been the benchmark region for Riesling in Australia for decades, and for good reason. 5 distinct areas within there is a long tradition of innovative winemaking. This was the region that actually took Riesling sort of under its wing, if you like, and everyone together decided to bottle the wines under screw cap, which was kind of a way of preserving that sort of freshness and deliciousness that exists with Riesling. So they've always been at the forefront of ideas and technology in Clare Valley, but it's also a region of fantastic tradition at the same time. Altitude's the key thing. We can grow red varieties and white varieties here in Riesling, not quite side by side with Shiraz, but it's about this altitude and exposures to or protection from the cooling breezes that tend to come in at night. No matter the temperature in general in Riesling, in Clare Valley, it always drops down in the evening, and that's why Riesling does so well. That cool temperatures at night. Interesting soil types, but the two main ones are sort of the soft rock sites of limestone and watervale, which gives a different sort of more sort of broad flavored style of Riesling, and then the classic broken slate, really ancient slate soils from Polish Hill. That's a hard rock sites, as they call them, and those wines tend to be a bit more austere and a bit more sort of tightly woven. Delicious wines though. Eden Valley, sort of a partner, if you like, of Clare Valley in South Australia for sort of top Riesling and reputation for this particular variety in Australia. And this is the sort of elevated area of what's known as the Barossa region. So cool climate neighbour of Barossa Valley, still part of the greater Barossa area. All sorts of interesting varieties do well there, but Riesling's absolutely one of them. It's about altitude. Some of the vineyard sites sit even higher than the vineyard sites in Clare Valley, some of them sitting at 550 to 600 meters above sea level. Different soils though, grey-brown in color, mostly sandy loam to clay loam soils, and they're generally well suited to this sort of dryland viticulture. So the style, I would say there's more similarities in style of Riesling from Eden Valley to Clare Valley, but there's probably this more sort of citrusy, minerally component as opposed to that lemon lime thing you get in Clare. Tasmania, something fascinating about Tasmania. We all love the idea of Tasmania. Pinot Noir does well there, Chardonnay does well there, but the sneaky little survivor there is actually Riesling. There's some delicious wines in various parts of Tasmania. Style-wise, probably a little softer in style and more appley and citrusy rather than the straight sort of lemon and lime notes you get in either Clare or Eden Valley. And another area that I absolutely love over here in Western Australia, a place called Great Southern, probably on the strengths of some famous wines coming out of the Franklin River region, specifically Franklin River wines. There's some brilliant Riesling, and they tend to be more full-flavored, but more along the sort of orange and sort of mandarin-flavored sort of citrus rather than the lemon lime. But anyway, there's a ton of really, really interesting wines in various parts of Australia for Riesling, but let's bring on Paul Grieco directly in from Terroir Wine Bar in New York. Paul, are you there? Paul, awesome to see you from, I'm guessing, the basement of Terroir. Lovely to see you. Always a pleasure.
Mark, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Mark, this is the room where it happens, goddammit, at Terroir. All of that incredible creativity emanates from these spaces and this cup of coffee. Big
and
cheers.
I can see the tools in the background for that creativity as well.
You know what? If I could have done anything else in my career, Mark, other than wine stuff, it would have been to create Post-it notes. I think Post-it notes might be the greatest thing we have ever come up with as human beings, next to the Zamboni, of course. Okay, Mark, let's talk Riesling.
Okay, cool. You are the self-proclaimed, or perhaps someone actually gave you this title. You're the overlord of Summer of Riesling. And you've been beating the Riesling drum for as long as I've known you, for as long as I've even heard about you before I even met you. What is it about this variety generally? Never mind Australia, let's talk about generally. There must have been something about this variety that captured your imagination. We talk about it in the trade for a long time, but what was it that got your captured your emotions and your attention?
It is important to know that for all of our proselytizing and preaching the gospel of Riesling, that I have never uttered the phrase that Riesling is the best.
Okay.
That it's the best grape, the best wine, that without question, historically, Riesling is one of the best and deserves to be on the Pantheon where it resided very comfortably so many moons ago, and then it got knocked off. So, Mark, my coming into the world of Riesling is like many other parts of my life, where I find things that I don't think get the respect that they deserve, be it music, books, movies, blah, blah, blah. And so in the world of wine, there is no other grape than Riesling that gets kicked to the proverbial curb more often. So I decided to wrap my big Canadian hands around this grape and wine and bring it along for a cool ride. And yes, we in the industry, when asked, so what's your favorite grape, what's your favorite wine? Invariably, top three would include Pinot Noir and Riesling. And so when I got to open my own joints, it became, well, if I'm going to utter that phrase, how am I backing it up? So given the ability to control a P&L and to direct absolutely the course of what an F&B operation is going to be, I said, I can curse here, right? We got our Aussie friends here. I said, it. You know, if I am going to utter that phrase, Riesling is one of, then I have to show it to my guests. And so it began with the Summer of Riesling in 2008, where I said, the only white wine by the glass for the entire 94 days of the summer is going to be Riesling. That is the rubber hitting the goddamn road. And then it was my job, along with my staff, who initially hated my guts, I will be honest, to try and then convince our guests that Riesling, the wine, can meet all of your tasting needs and desires. And we've been doing that now for 12, 13 years. If you're going to ask me, well, have we had any goddamn success? I don't measure my career on success, Mark. I just want to get out of bed every goddamn day and have another cup of coffee. That's success. Anyway, back to you, sir.
Awesome. No, it is. I think it is an interesting variety, and it's certainly got a lovely storied history in Australia. Now, you've been to Australia, you've been to some of the regions where Riesling does well. What is it about Aussie Riesling you think maybe separates it or differentiates it from elsewhere, or does it seem different from elsewhere? What's your take on the good regional expressions in Australia?
I will try to walk gently through this answer, and I hate to generalize the entirety of the world of Riesling in Australia with one statement, but Aussie Riesling is the exact opposite of what we believe to be the personality of every single Aussie out there. Mark, you are a joyful goddamn people. You seemingly party all the time. You love life. You take every opportunity to enjoy these sound moments, yet you produce Riesling that is so goddamn austere, lean, mean, aggressive. And I know I'm writing large across the continent of Australia, but if I had to summarize, Aussie Rieslings are dry, period. You use those two words, residual sugar. Please, sir, I defy you to really measure residual sugar in Aussie Rieslings. It's almost as if they have negative residual sugar. And I know that's a reaction against what was in the marketplace so many decades ago, and the pendulum has certainly swung to the opposite side. So, having said that, it is relatively easy to sell Aussie Riesling, because when someone sits down and is willing to have that Riesling conversation and they say, but it must be dry, well, all you need to do, grab a bottle of Aussie Riesling, done. Like, you cannot even begin to debate with me that you might think that that wine has some of that S-word shit in it. No goddamn way. And so what I've seen, what I wish for so many moons ago, Mark, was that Aussie Rieslings could actually use a dollop more residual sugar to balance things out, to put some flesh in there. I'm not going to back away from that statement, but I've become a little bit more open-minded to this Puritan Aussie style of Riesling. And I'm loving it, especially in a New York City summer that is hot and humid, and I want to quench my thirst. Aussie Rieslings, man, do that immediately.
Yeah, you targeted a perfect point to this whole idea of people drinking certain styles they want dry, and they don't want to even look at a particular a style of wine that says Riesling on the label. They say, oh, no, it's not going to be dry, it's going to be sweet. You give it to them, a good Eden Valley Riesling or a Clare Valley Riesling, they're like, oh, wow, that's not what I was thinking. And even if some of those more modern styles that do exist with a little bit of residual sugar, you don't even see it. You don't even know. It just comes across as fruitiness because of that backbone of acidity. And most people just think, hey, that's dry and it's really delicious. So, yeah, I think the dry element of what's going on with Riesling in Australia has always been the backbone of what's made it successful. So, and do you have a favorite region in Australia for Riesling, or do you don't want to go there?
Well, listen, no, I'm happy to dive in, but you're not going to get an answer out of me, goddammit. It's easy to say Clare and Eden. And I love a lot of the producers there, the wines. I love the lime aromatics of Clare. I love that Puritan nature of Eden. And if I'm allowed to mention a specific wine, the Contours by Pusey Vale is certainly one of the most unique Rieslings on the planet and has a fingerprint of identity that cannot be mistaken, except if I'm writing the Master Somm exam, of course, then I will mistake everything. Then we're going to go a little bit broader out. I'm falling more and more in love with the things going on in Western Australia, the Franklin River region, Victoria, the history. My trip to Australia, I was given a bunch of Rieslings blind. Lo and behold, they all turned out to be from Bess. And the first one was 1970. And Mark, I got to tell you, that 1970 Riesling from Bess tasted like it was 5 years of age. I have no clue how you all do that stuff down there. Things don't seemingly age, and it was under screw cap. So I love that region. Tassie, I don't know enough about that yet, but you have, with this unabashed sunlight shining down upon that beautiful country of yours, giving texture into the wines from your thick skins of these grapes. That is, in its own way, helping to offset that Puritan austerity. Writ large, dude, you've got some pretty awesome stuff happening down there in the Riesling world. So I will use the classics, and I'm still searching for the next region that is going to rock my world. Can we talk history, goddammit?
Talk history. You can talk whatever you want. You have the floor.
And a big cup of coffee, goddammit, so I'm going to seize the conversation. So I would love to, in the future, Mark, pursue the forefathers of your Riesling movement down there, the Leo Burings, the Colin Grahams. I want Steingarten Vineyard to be recognized maybe as the greatest Riesling vineyard in the Southern Hemisphere. That is what I would like to do with the next 25 years of my life. I want to have a meeting somewhere with John Vickery, goddammit, or Brian Crozier. Jeffrey Grossett is too smart for me. I don't know what to say to that dude when I see him, but I want to get in my time travel machine, and I want to get on an airplane and get to Australia to discourse with these gentlemen or with the spirits of these gentlemen to get a greater background into what is, Mark, your greatest wine, period, amen, coming out of your fair country, and that wine is Riesling.
I don't know. You won't get me too many arguments from me, and I'd probably back you on that Steingarten site as well. I think there are a few really interesting sites, but I think you jumped on a really interesting point where when you're doing a 10,000-foot view of Riesling as we are here today, there's so many little gems, and small production doesn't make it out of Australia very often. But Crawford River, for example, in Victoria, I remember trying that going, whoa, there's a different take on Riesling. And so we have all these lovely additional tiny little places for wonderful Riesling. But I mean, across the country, I think the important thing to remember is that we've got a lovely history. And we have a very distinct and unique style. And I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion. I love the fact that you've done what you've done for Riesling, not just Australian Riesling. I think it's been awesome stuff. And I can't wait to get back to New York to see you. And with that, unless you've got something else to add, we're going to wind this up. But it's awesome to see you. And I can't wait to share a glass of Riesling with you at some time in the near future.
Just, Mark, know when I go to sleep at night that your picture is above my right shoulder. Just putting that out there.
I'm not sure if that's comforting or disturbing. It's probably a bit of both. Good to see you.
Cheers, dude. Bye-bye.